When it comes to prosperity, we certainly cannot take it for granted. And there's a lot of key policies that make our prosperity in Canada and across the West possible. And so today we're going to talk about the keys to prosperity and what's going on both in the United States and certainly across the Western world, including Canada. And with me here today is certainly one of the leading American economic analysts, Steve Moore. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be with you guys.
Well, Steve, it's great to have you. And I know you're one of the leaders on the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And you know a lot of, I think, really the greats in terms of really that have really brought clarity around economic analysis and thinking. I'm thinking of Steve Forbes and the great Art Laffer. So, can you tell us, first of all, about the Committee to Unleash Prosperity? What is that initiative?
Well, this is an organization we started back in 2015, and you're going to love this. It was Steve Forbes and Larry Kudlow and Arthur Laffer and myself, and we call ourselves the SupplySide Beatles. And I'm Ringo. I bang on the drums, and they make the beautiful music. But Arthur Laffer and Steve Forbes and Larry Kudlow are icons, and we use the committee to speak use it as a platform for all of us to try to influence policy here in the United States and around the world, and in the states, the governors, the mayors of the country, and so it's been a successful venture, in large part because of the enormous prestige that those three bring to the table. And I would just say that if anyone would like to get our free, no inflation here, our
Indeed.
free, what we call our morning hotline, just go to committee.unleashprosperity.com and sign up, and we will send it to you for free. So, not selling anybody anything, but if you want to get a good little economic analysis and political analysis every morning. And by the way, we've been paying attention to what's happening in Canada, and I don't like it at all.
Well, we're going to get into that because I tell you, there's a lot, as you say, going on in Canada. And in all fairness, we really want to examine those policies and say, like, who are they serving and how do we improve things? Because, when we look to our friend and neighbor in the United States, we see a long history of prosperity, and we can't take those things for granted. So, just let me clarify. You used a term supply side economics. I know that other citizens on the left spectrum or socialists like to mischaracterize it. But what is supply side economics, Steve?
Well, first of all, we all know, I think everyone watching this show or listening to the show knows that the goose that lays the golden eggs of prosperity is the free enterprise system, right? Not government.
Indeed.
It's free markets and free people, and the explosion of investment and entrepreneurship. That's really been the key to American prosperity and Canadian prosperity as well, and
Mhm.
that is under assault in the United States and Canada and much of Europe, and it pains me to say that. Now, in terms of, how do you create prosperity? One of the points that, Laffer and Kudlow and Steve Forbes and I like to make is that it really isn't that complicated. You really don't need a PhD in economics to understand how to grow an economy. You need a sound currency that, retains its value, is stable in its value.
Mhm.
The good news for the most part, we have that in the United States, although we've had a big run of inflation. You need free trade. You need a tax system that doesn't take the fruits of people's labor and
Mhm.
investment, and you need minimal government. I mean, obviously, we need government, but we need to make sure that it doesn't stand in the way of the progress that we need in this country. And right now, I have to say, despite all the things that Biden is trying to do to hurt our economy, it is true that we do have the strongest economy in the world right now. And that's just a testament to, our people and our entrepreneurial ability. But I worry about our future, as I think so many Americans do. And so, when I say we have got the best economy, I'm kind of saying we're the tallest midget in the room because most of the rest of the world is not getting it right now. And, we should be seeing a glorious period
Mhm.
of prosperity, but it's not happening. And that's because, in part, a lot of countries look to the United States for the leadership, and we're not providing it. We're doing a lot of the
Mhm.
wrong things here, and a lot of the other countries are learning the wrong lessons from us.
No, I would definitely agree, and I think that your, um, dare I say, the Goldilocks formula. You said currency, free trade, not too much government, or like reasonable regulation. And what was the fourth one you mentioned?
You need the stable currency. You need
You need
because
a
without
stable
a
currency.
currency that holds its value, you don't can't. It's hard uh, to involve yourself in commerce if you don't have a currency. And so those are obvious things. We want to. I'm advising Donald Trump in this campaign on the
Mhm.
economy, as I did in 2016, and we want to get the taxes low. We want to that is to make sure that especially the tax rates. Joe Biden is going around the country saying we're going to soak the rich. If you do that, you're not going to have a lot of rich people to soak. That's the problem.
Indeed.
And so that policy has never worked anywhere or any time. I know that you have those inclinations and your Canadian government too. Sock it to the rich. Well, guess what? They find ways around paying the taxes. They could leave. We have,
Mhm.
as you know, we're more than Canada, we're really oriented towards states and having the
Mhm.
states decide their policies. Well, we have 9 states that have no income tax, and then we have very liberal states like California and New York and New Jersey and my home state of Illinois, where Chicago is, and everybody's
Mhm.
leaving. They're leaving those states and they're going to places where taxes are low. So those are what Arthur Laffer would call the pillars of prosperity. And
Mhm.
if we could get political leaders like yours to follow those principles, everybody would be better off, especially the poor, by the way. The people who get hurt the most when you have a economy that's not working are the people at the bottom.
No, I totally agree. The irony is that so many talk about the need for a larger government when in fact, who really is served by that? Is it just a few special interests, if you will, or is it really working people in our country? So, speaking of our countries, I did want to give you a little bit of a measure of the mood in Canada. I know you've been a keen observer of our country, but there's a real affordability crisis, if that doesn't sound familiar to you in the United States, but a real concern about a decrease in our standard of living. We've looked at certainly the last 12 quarters, if it serves me correctly, my memory, of declining productivity. I mean, this is a foreshadow of a nation on decline. We even have all kinds of anecdotes around one in 10 people in the larger Toronto area relying on food banks on a regular basis. I mean, this is unheard of. And then you have a whole dynamic of really a generation, a younger generation in particular, that really doesn't have a hope that they could um, own a home in many different markets from Vancouver to Toronto. But these are really train wrecks of affordability. So, is that what you're seeing in our country as you look at the stats?
Well, I haven't. I'm kind of looking at Canada from afar, but I'm paying very close attention to what's happening here in the
Hmm.
United States, and um, it's not a pretty picture right now. I mean, the middle class is getting hammered by the high
Hmm.
inflation. Most American families, the median family in America, is poorer today than they were 3 years ago when
Hmm.
you adjust for
Hmm.
inflation. So they've lost ground. And so when Joe Biden runs around the country saying how wonderful everything is, yeah, our GDP is higher, the stock market's doing well, and I'm in favor of
Hmm.
those things for sure. But if you go to the grocery store, if you go to the gas pumps here, if you go, look at people paying their rent or their mortgage or their electric bills, people are angry. They're very angry and they're stressed out
They really are.
financially. They should be because we've seen inflation. When you look at the essentials that Americans have to buy, inflation's up by about, I don't know, 25%, and people's paychecks are up maybe 16, 17, 18%. So do the math there.
Hmm.
They're getting when your cost of living rises by 25% and your paycheck rises by 18%, you're falling behind. And so there is a sense of financial insecurity in the country. I'll give you one example, just in terms of housing. We have a housing crisis here, and you use the word affordability. That's a good word to use. And people can't afford a new home. And, I have 2 sons that are in their 30s. They can't buy a house. This is about the time when people start to think about, buying a
Hmm.
starter home. Well, they can't pay the mortgage, because the mortgage prices have doubled in just, for a 30-year mortgage. That's probably happening in Canada as well. So we
Mm-hmm.
believe that the American dream, or there's a lot of components to the great American dream, but one of those components is to own your own home. And when you're pricing
Exactly.
people out, that's a big problem.
Indeed. And so the Canadian dream, that's a phrase that we use in our country, of course, is really being undermined. And we think it's really because of bad government policy.
Of course.
And so
So
in that,
let me address that because it's a really important point you're making is that this runaway inflation that happened when Biden came into office, and let's not forget that when Trump left office, we had a 1.5% inflation rate, and in
Mhm,
18 months, Biden took it from 1.5% to 9%. That's pretty. I wouldn't have thought any president could run the country off the tracks that quickly as he did. And we saw the inflation recede last year, but guess what? It's picking up again because we're not
mhm,
controlling our government spending. And look, I'm not blaming only Joe Biden. I mean, the Republicans in Congress are not very good at we don't have
indeed.
many fiscal conservatives left in either party. And that's one of the things that's keeping me up at night when, we're borrowing $1.5 trillion a year. Now, borrowing in and of itself is not a bad thing, but you've got
Mhm,
to look at what you're getting for your money. We're not building things. We're just using the
mhm.
money to pay for our bills. And it's like
Yeah.
going out and drinking. If you and I went out drinking tonight, we'd have a great time. We could be dancing on the tables, but then we can't get out of bed in the morning. And that's what we're doing. That's what worries me about the trend we're on. And it can't continue. There will be a reckoning. And I get asked this all the time. Well, when is it going to happen? When is it going to collapse? I don't know if it's going to be 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years from now, but I guarantee you, if we continue doing what we're doing in the US, and I'd say the same for Canada, that story will not have a happy ending.
Wow. So in that context, we can't take our prosperity for granted. And so just the other week, we had another federal budget. Obviously, we have a lot of governments in Canada, certainly at the federal and provincial levels. But at the federal level, we have a deficit of some $40 billion. We've got an accumulated debt of $1.25 trillion. That's more money has been accumulated in debt under this federal administration than all the others combined, all the way up to our first prime minister, Sir John A.
Yes.
Macdonald. It's just mind-boggling. So, in this context, they've introduced a budget. They're increasing many things, not to which are taxes. And I want to go through some of those items quickly and just get your opinion. But this whole increase on capital gains, they've increased this significantly so that if you've got a capital gains over $250,000, that's it. Your marginal tax rate is going to increase even higher to 2/3. So, is that a good idea to increase those capital gains even further, Steve? What do you think?
Well, listen, I mean, the correct rate of tax on capital gains is zero, right? Because the company already paid the
Zero.
tax and then you're taxing them twice. And we have the same issue here in the US where Biden wants to double our capital gains tax. He wants to increase the tax on dividends that companies pay. He wants to increase the corporate tax. And then he wants to tax people at death if they hold on to the stock. So you get hit two or three times, and the effective tax rate on, say, $1 million investment could go as high as 60 to 70%. Well, look, again, economics is not complicated. Is if
Mm.
you had Arthur Laffer on with you right now, he'd say, what he's always says, if you tax something, you're going to get less of it, right? This isn't, why do we
Sorry,
tax
can you
cigarettes?
repeat that again? That sounds like a
Yeah, right.
profound point.
If you tax something, you're going to get less of it. So when you tax people on their investment, are they going to invest more or less? I think most seventh graders could probably answer that question, but most politicians can't.
I think you're absolutely right. In fact, the reaction has been interesting. We even have in different quarters people saying, like, I'm a small business person. I'm relying on those gains that I've worked so hard. And I've ridden the ups and downs of really low income to be able to appreciate the value of my business. And then all of a sudden the government swoops in. It's almost like a wealth tax. And it's something that's going to drive investment away from our country, and so this is all going to hurt every Canadian, isn't it, in terms of future prosperity, let alone every American in the Biden context?
Look, Um, in Canada and in the United States, what we want is the best pro-investment climate possible because investment is the seed corn of a growing economy. And if you
Indeed.
don't have investment, you don't have businesses. If you don't have businesses, you don't have workers. And if you don't have workers, you don't have any output and you go straight to the poorhouse. So, everyone knows that you need investment. These are the people who invest in startup companies. These are the people who help start Google and Apple and Amazon and these
Hmm.
great, companies in the US. And we're proud of the fact that we have, six of the seven biggest companies in the world are American companies, and they were all built, in garages, with startup capital. So you need to do that, and you need to treat capital kindly because if you don't, it's going to go somewhere else. It's easy. I'm looking at you on my computer. I could with a click of my butt, uh, on my keyboard, I could transfer money out of the United States somewhere else. And, and just like anybody can, and certainly millionaires and billionaires can do it. So if you try to tax them here, you won't find it. You're not going to be
I,
able to
I
tax
think
it.
you're right.
Millionaires and billionaires didn't get rich by being stupid. They're going to find
Exactly.
ways around this. And that's why all these soak the rich policies, who gets wet? The middle class gets wet, not the rich. They find ways around
Yeah.
paying these taxes.
Precisely. I'm with you, Steve. I like your way of thinking here. We've got to protect those people in the garages, the tinkerers, the inventors. And if you tax them, then they go elsewhere. I mean, it's not complicated. So, and those are really the family jewels. It's our future because things are changing all the time. Where businesses that existed some 50 years ago are long gone, and so we're trying to nurture the next set of innovators. So,
Can I make another point about this? Because it's
yeah.
you're on to something important. So let's just even assume that you could get the money from the rich. I don't think you're going to, but let's say you could. Well,
Mhm.
wait a minute. Who do you think can invest money more wisely? Someone like a Bill Gates and a Carl Icahn or politicians? you know, Politicians aren't very good at investing money. Why not let the people who've shown that they are smart and they're brilliant and they know how to build things, uh, you know, let them do it. I don't understand this mindset that the government is going to be able to invest in a smarter way. I mean, we've tried that under Biden. We keep investing more and more money in electric vehicles and solar panels and windmills, and they're nowhere. We're not, the private sector always beats the government bureaucrats, and so it's just a bad way to invest, even if you could get the money, which is very difficult to do.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.